Oh, what a great time we have this morning. I'm telling you, I am so excited about this gentleman who's joining us. So, Matt, can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right,
Yes.
there you are. Clear and clear. That's great. Well, so it's a little after 7 a.m. California time. I don't know about you, but it's one thing to get up and do your normal routine. It's another thing to be ready at 7 a.m. To share with people your story and why you're so successful and to be on point. You and I were talking about it last night, and you said my intention is just to kind of just talk about what I do and just kind of let it flow. And I think that's what we're going to do. So I'm excited about it. So good morning to you. Thanks for being here.
Yes, good morning to you as well. And you echo my sentiments on the morning, because I wake up early every day. I'm probably a 6 o'clock riser.
Right.
But I have my routine. Part of it's getting my little baby out of bed, getting him over to my wife, and taking care of the dog, and getting the coffee made, and all those things. So,
right.
It's a little different this morning.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you letting us interrupt your normal routine.
It's all good, man.
No, that's great. Thank you. So let's first of all start with just a little bit about you. So you mentioned you have a baby. Tell us about your family and just a little bit about you personally, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, my wife, Nicole, and I have an almost 8-month-old baby. We started a little bit later in life, and it's really been such a blessing. Literally everything I wanted. I have a different perspective now, I think, generally on life and business. I just, everything is, my world's not about me anymore. I guess that's the really biggest change. I lived a life in my 20s and probably early 30s that selfish would probably be a good word to define much of what I did. And I've really pivoted over the past decade. So we have one little baby boy. Our family's local and close by. We try to, in normal times, get out and about and travel and do all the fun things we all love to do. So,
well, as long as this thing's going on, it seems like that these are normal times. It just keeps going and going. But
the new norm, yes.
Yeah. So I just want to visit on that what you said. That's probably the biggest change is that the focus less on you and more on others. Just because we've got plenty of time to talk about a lot of things, but I think that what motivates us, what causes us to get up every morning is extremely critical. In fact, I believe that that's the defining characteristic between those who are ultimately extraordinary and those who are average and just simply try to survive and get by. So talk a little bit more about that. How has that affected your day-to-day in the business, and I guess more specifically, just your drive within the business? Because I know you, and you're a dedicated, disciplined guy. Has that dedication or that discipline changed? And if not, how has that mindset shift from not having the family, not having your son, and then all of a sudden 8 months ago having this little human being that you're responsible for? Just talk a little bit about that and how that's affected you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because, as you know, I've transitioned my business over the past, let's say, 10 months since I've joined Everest. And with that came a lot of challenges up front, a lot of new things for me to learn, a lot of things that I hadn't done before, things I'm still evolving through right now. And I was, pretty hyper motivated to get these things done and try new things. And then my son was born, and it was, I had this moment for about a month that I was talking to Trish Perez and Kendall about, and I just felt guilty coming to the office. And part of it stems to my childhood and, not having my dad around, which I don't need to go into that story, but really I would sort of go to work and feel like I was missing out on my son's life. So it was very challenging. And I had to work through that. I can go to work and still be a good dad and still be there for my son. And I was able to do that. And so here we are now. I guess I went through that period, kind of came back around. Then COVID hit, and I had a pretty rough 2-3 weeks at the beginning. it just kind of crushed my soul. There was so much uncertainty around it and business and what are we going to do? And then I came around that. And, between my family, the need to provide for my family and the uncertainty in the world, I've just become so ultra hyper focused this past, I would say 6 weeks more than ever before. So I don't know, man. I think it's literally just a product of my, environment and what's going on in the world and really redefining what's important to me, which ultimately my family's number one. So.
Well, I mean, I don't think that any of that makes you normal. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that the way in which you respond is very atypical. A lot of people panic and then, of course, blame, and don't take action. And then they really have some challenges because the external things are only as real as we allow them to be. And it's been interesting to watch how so many different people respond to the same set of circumstances, to the same pandemic, for example, or the same economy and the challenges. So it's just interesting to watch how different people respond. Just very quickly, so that people have some perspective, do you mind if I just share with some people your total numbers last year, just so they understand what level of business you're doing?
Sure.
Okay, so last year I verified that you did about $650,000 in GCI, and you did 45 units. And as you mentioned, you were working on a transition the last 10 months. So let's talk a bit about that in terms of the way in which you've worked to restructure your business and maybe some of the struggles there. Because I think that whether somebody was doing the business the way you were or the way that you're doing it, for them to hear about the challenge that you've gone through in terms of that restructuring, and then having to deal with that, plus a new family, plus a pandemic, plus everything that's been going on in here in LA relative to the demonstrations and all the complications from that. I think people want to hear this. I think that it's important for them to hear that, you can have a lot going on and still keep it together and move forward. So just share with us a little bit about that transition and what you've been focused on.
Sure. I think really the very first most important piece for me is I've been licensed for a long time and did a lot of transactions, but when I really took a step back and looked at my business, before about 2 years ago, I was never 100% wholly dedicated to my real estate brokerage business, period. I just wasn't. I had other things going on. I was always involved in real estate and I was doing deals, but I wasn't 100% invested. I had ancillary pieces of things that were, helping us get by and moving forward. When I moved to Everest, I made a commitment that I was going to dedicate everything and give my real estate business 100%. And then anything I did beyond that would be ancillary.
Why that shift? Why that shift from being in it to being fully committed in it?
I think it was just time. Like I said, I had played in some various avenues on the real estate investment side, some stuff on the flip side. I had a partnership that dissolved and the market shifted. Opportunity on that side of the business was more challenging. And I just really wanted, it's funny I say this in our business, but I wanted the stability of the brokerage business to sort of be the catalyst to anything else I wanted to do. I know it's a very ironic statement, but I am one that does believe that there can be stability in what we do.
Absolutely. And I love it. I love the smile on your face because it tells, like there's that aha, and because it's so ironic relative to what most agents say and think, right? And the external forces that they get from people saying, well, maybe you should get a quote unquote real job. And yet we both know that it can be a very consistent business if we structure it that way. So how have you worked and how are you working to structure it so that it becomes that for you?
So it's been quite the ride. Let me tell you, I did a lot of research and learning and talking to a lot of people that know more about this stuff than I do up front. And I came up with a plan of really what I wanted to do. I wanted to grow a team on a smaller level. I didn't want to just get a bunch of bodies there because I wanted to make sure that I could provide to my team what gives them value, which is ultimately, a couple things. One, guidance from me, but two, opportunity, various opportunity. So that was one piece. And then I really wanted to be cutting edge in this business. It's ever evolving. Technology, as we know, is ever changing and crazy. So I wanted to be with the elite of the elite, doing sort of digital lead generation, in addition to all the more what I would call traditional things we do in real estate. So I spent a lot of time and money implementing first a CRM that I scrapped after 2 months, which was fun, and then various different online lead generating strategies. What I realized is the leads are just the beginning. The rest of it's really hard. So I had to put systems in place. I never realized, literally, the guys that do, and I'm sure we in Utah have a lot of them, but the people that lead generate digitally on a high level, I mean, it's impressive. I mean, I was blown away by what goes into some of these teams and what they do in analytics and this and that. So I won't go too much into that, but it was a big holy crap moment for me. And it wasn't an area that I am good at, really. I'm good at sort of selling real estate, meeting with clients, the A to Z of real estate, but the marketing piece was very tricky. So I outsourced much of it. And then, things work out, they don't. I'm still ever evolving through that process. But what I realized is it's hard and you really need to be patient. I mean, low quality lead, which is the majority of online lead generation, the statistics say between day one, somebody will, let's say, sign up for a Facebook paper or horse registration lead, and the time they close escrow is something like 460 something days.
Wow, long-term commitment there.
Yeah, it's a very, very long-term commitment, and it's expensive, and it's been frustrating and hard. But we're starting to see some success. So I'm going to keep pushing on and try to tweak that. But I've realized the core of the business doesn't go away. So all those things I do with my sphere, I'm doing. I literally have spent with 4 different people helping me putting together a farm piece. I've wanted to do a farm again for so long, and I just resisted. Well, my mailer is going to print today. So
well, just pause for one second, because I want you to continue your story, but sure. I just want to observe something, and I think this is important for everybody who's watching and listening to hear this. One thing that I know about you is that you are somebody who's willing to leverage the time and abilities of other people and to reach out and to get their input. I've watched you do that over and over again. And I don't think it's a coincidence that that's one of the ways in which you operate, your characteristics, and your production is where it is, and how you respond to what's going on in the market or in the world, and remain, I guess, relevant and productive. I think that's very interesting. I just want people to note that you don't stand there alone and say, I've got this all figured out. You say, I need help. I think it speaks to your transition from the brokerage you were at to really breaking it down and saying, okay, where I'm going to go, where I can get the tools and the coaching and the systems to reinvent my business.
Yeah, and I think it's important to find people, one, who you can vet out from just what they do on a daily basis. And then 2, well, it's just like anything for us, working with somebody that you get along with and working with somebody you trust. So again, there were a couple circumstances in the last 10 months where I've shifted from, one agency to another, one person doing something to another, and that's just part of business. But I got to stay in my lane. Ultimately, my entire business is my responsibility, and I oversee it all, but I stay in my lane. And really, like digital marketing, graphics, farm, this, that, it's not my expertise.
So I want to stress this. I love what you just said. You change companies. You're working on changing the fundamental way in which you operate your business. Your son was born 8 months ago. There's been a pandemic, and then what we've been dealing with especially I think more acutely here than other parts of the country with the demonstrations and some of the riots. All of that going on, and you said, and I have to stay in my lane. Talk about that. When you say staying in your lane, what does that mean? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? When Matt Leibman says, I got to stay in my lane, what does that mean?
I mean, I focus, going back to some of the stuff we talked about, I have help in certain areas. So I need to rely on the people that I brought on to assist me in various areas and be confident that they are going to do their jobs to a high level. Because ultimately, I had this conversation yesterday with some frustrating things that I spent 90 minutes. I'm like, if everybody does what they're supposed to do, a real estate transaction should be relatively easy. Unfortunately, as we know, it doesn't always work that way. So I do what I'm supposed to do. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. And I stay in my lane. Beyond that, though, I want to jump into a little bit of what we talked
Please
about
do.
Today, because I truly think this has been the most important thing for me right now. There's so much madness going on in this world. Our business is hard enough as it is in, let's call it, normal times, but there is so much out of our control. And I try to focus on what's in my control, and I don't stress about, I'll say crap, that's not my word, but I don't stress about crap out of my control, because I will go mad crazy on a daily basis. Business is hard right now. Like I told you, I have a lot of volume and I'm extremely grateful. It's not the volume that's causing me pain. It's the most likely personalities that lead to circumstances that cause me pain. And Karen Betancourt and I had a great conversation the other day. And it's like, I don't think the buyers and sellers are the problem most of the time. It's the agents. It's the agents who then cause their buyers and sellers to become a problem.
Right.
So, again, there's a lot of problems. You got to live in solutions. I'm a solution-oriented person, so I don't sweat the problems. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm human, but I've given myself like a 5-minute pout rule. And this applies to me if I lose a 6-figure commission, to if another agent pisses me off in a request for repairs. I pout for 5 minutes. Oh my gosh, I lost my deal. I should have made the 100 grand. Gone.
Yeah. So you're human, but you move on quickly.
So give yourself a moment, but don't let it be more than 5 minutes, because you're just going to fester in your own negative energy, and it's hard to get out of it.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that, yeah, you are human as well. You just don't give yourself the opportunity to wallow in it like a lot of people do.
Let it screw up the day, the week, the month. Wallow.
Yeah. Cool. That's great. Okay. So somebody asked the question, what CRM did you end up using? Which one are you using right now to maintain contact and manage your leads?
I moved to Follow Up Boss about 10 months ago, and then I left Follow Up Boss for Sierra Interactive is the CRM I use now.
What is it again? Say it again.
Sierra Interactive.
Okay.
I do some coaching just for my digital lead gen with some guys that probably they're up there in the country in terms of success and knowledge with this stuff. And it was a recommendation they made that they moved after moving for a long time. The main reason why Sierra is because of mass text capability. Follow Up Boss does not have that. And text is everything these days. Phone calls are important, but response rates and open rates on texts are astronomical in comparison. Because if you think about it, how many of us, if we picked up our phones right now, how many unread texts do you have? Maybe there's some since this meeting started, but probably before then, right?
Yep.
So,
yep.
So
that's so true.
Great for my texting, and then it allows me to do everything else that any other CRM would allow me to do as well.
Okay. All right. So I want to let people kind of see your day-to-day if we can. You talk about staying in your lane. You said something that was interesting just a couple of minutes ago, that basically the leads are out there. getting the lead is not the hardest thing. It's everything that happens after that. I believe that every agent has a core job, and that core job starts with generating a lead. But the generation of lead, I agree with you, we're on the same page, is not the most difficult thing. The most difficult thing is maturing that lead to the point that it becomes a client, your client, not somebody else's, because we know at some point they're going to, and then taking them through that customer service experience where they're happy at the end so that they come back over and over again for, you know, their lifetime. So when you say the most difficult part is what happens after you generate the lead, talk with everybody, talk with me about what does that look like for you practically on a day-to-day basis?
It's trying to connect, and really, you know, connection is sometimes a challenge, especially when you're lead generating at those levels. But ultimately, how I coach my team and myself, the call is simply about connecting. Like, I don't care about anything else. We've talked about this, John. Most listing presentations, I go in with nothing because I just want to connect. And I have something. It just doesn't come out 90% of the time.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing for online lead generation, because the people that are landing on various sites, we'd be naive to think we're the only. So what I want to do is differentiate ourselves from everybody else and really get to understand people's story. And if we can do that, you can kind of figure out the pain points in what they're going through in life and guide them in the right direction. So really, like, real estate should be almost 10% maybe of a conversation initially. I just want to get to know people. I want to connect, period.
Yeah.
And then the rest is easy.
It's so true. When you say that the lead is the easiest part, everything after that is difficult. And really what that means is, what I hear you saying is that you're dealing with people and trying to connect with people. And not only the clients, but then also the agents who are involved in the process, who oftentimes can be an impediment to the transaction successfully closing. And it's really understanding how to connect with people, to communicate with people, and lead people through the process. I always say that real estate is nothing more than leadership. The value that we offer to people is our leadership ability and our ability to communicate with them. So critical. And that's what I hear you saying.
It's true. And I think that a really important statement on leadership is, there's this misconception, I think, in our business. Like, ultimately, my clients make the final decisions, but I'm the leader. I'm the boss, not them. And I think you need to, in a professional way, do that with the other agents you work with as well. Absolutely, your clients. Like, you better have some control over the situation. I think it's a sad state of our business that I feel like many agents get sort of railroaded by or steamrolled by clients. But I think leadership is important beyond just when it comes to leads or a team. You need to be a leader throughout, in my opinion. And I think that differentiates excellent agents from good agents.
I was just going to say that. Spot on. I think that the greatest differentiator between the average agent and a very successful agent like yourself is your ability to lead people confidently. They need you to be that, as you said, quote unquote, boss, that leader, someone who exudes confidence, and that, hey, look, I've got this figured out. I know what I'm doing. If you will follow my lead, I'm going to help you get what it is that you want. That is such an intangible commodity, but it is so valuable. That's what people are looking for. They're not paying for your access to the MLS. They're not paying for your card, your sign, all those other things, because they can get that for next to nothing. There are companies who will pay them to, like, oh, here, I will pay you to put your home on the MLS just so I can have it to generate leads so I can go out and sell other homes. That's not the value for people. The value for buyers and sellers is having a human being who's confident in a process and leading people to help them get what it is that they want. It's so true.
Yep. And to just go a step beyond that, I think I deal with this frustration almost on a daily basis with various different people, whether it's like an escrow contractor or a vendor. When you tell somebody you're going to do something, either do it, ideally do it every time. If you're not going to do it, communicate before the time you were supposed to do it, why you're not going to do it and when you are. This most simple thing can save so much trouble in your life. But I think that, the communication piece is a great part of what good leaders do. And I think there's a lack of communication out there and expectations. And then beyond, just back to what we said about leading the client, things are hard right now. I'm like putting together pretty creative stuff, like, stuff that's far from easy. And if you walk clients through that and then they realize what you're doing, and then you're able to accomplish that goal, you're going to earn that much more respect in the end from your clients. I mean, I'm going through 2 scenarios right now where it was like, bumpy waters. And I just said, just trust me, we're going to do da, 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 da. And we did it. And now it's like I have a client for life.
Yeah. Setting expectations and meeting them, so critical in this process. So critical.
Or if you can't, things change in this business, communicate that you cannot.
Right. Yep. Communicate. People want to know. So we've got a few minutes here before we wrap up, but I want to ask you about your mindset. You've been through a lot over the last year in terms of change, and like everybody, you've been dealing with the impact of COVID-19 and then the economy that resulted from that, and what that's done to our business practically on a day-to-day basis. You said something earlier, in fact, I wrote it down. You said that having the COVID-19 on the heels of all the change, you're transitioning the brokerage business, the change in your fundamental approach to the business, but then also just, dealing with the family and how that affected your day-to-day. And you said it crushed my soul. I don't know if you remember saying that. So talk about that from a mindset standpoint, because you've been authentic, and I appreciate you doing that, because people oftentimes think that they look at somebody like you who's producing at the level that you do, saying, well, he's got it all figured out and he doesn't have any challenges. And man, I'd like to be that, but I'm not that lucky or whatever. So when you say crushed your soul, how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with it on a day-to-day basis? How do you create an opportunity for yourself to mentally, physically, and emotionally be ready to go and face all of these challenges?
Yeah, and ironically, my answer is going to be sort of Marianne Williamson-esque. I know we talk about that, but it's the truth. It really is. So I've gone through, various challenges in my life, and I'm very grateful to be where I am today. I'm very grateful to have what I have in terms of family relationships, all those things. So gratitude gets me further than anything, I would say, normally on a day-to-day basis, because I can look at something real bad and then just flip to gratitude, and it's real easy. I mean, I learned that years and years ago when I was going through various other challenges in life. And if you live in gratitude, it's hard to sort of have a negative mentality, but it was crushing. The first 2-3 weeks after COVID, I was scared, and there's a lot of fear. I am the breadwinner for my family. What the heck's going to happen? Is this just the beginning? So like all these fears and insecurities that we have as human beings, I have them all too. And I had them, and it was, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? I was overcome by fear, and it took me a couple weeks to get my normal self back to think in gratitude, and then just push on. Think in gratitude and stop stressing about the things out of my control. And once I was able to do those 2 things, I springboarded forward, and I'm busier than ever. So I just got to work on keeping this momentum going. And I know there'll be some ups and downs, but those were my 2 ways out.
Yeah. Well, I love it that so oftentimes we're hoping that there is a different answer, right, to those fundamental questions. And yet it always goes back to the fundamental answers that we know. It's just are we going to accept that? And if we will, and truly immerse ourselves in that, for example, that state of gratitude, it's amazing what impact it'll have, not eventually, but immediately. And I think we've all had that experience, that we truly find ourselves in an absolute moment of gratitude, that there is no fear in that moment. There isn't, it can't exist. It's so interesting. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So what, in terms of the skill that you work on, let's set aside the systems and all of that, but what's the number one skill that Matt Leibman is focused on, or has been over the last 6 to 12 months? What's that one skill that you would say, this is the thing that I've really had to work on fundamentally in the business, or that I've decided that that's what I'm going to focus on and become great at?
Gosh, it's really hard to pin it down to one piece, really, because I'm doing different things. I think if we talk in 6 months, I'll have a better answer. But what I personally needed to do is be more patient with myself, with others, with the process. And I'm not very good at that, John. So that's been hard. I operate, like, I'm very intense the way I operate. I have these expectations. Well, I got away. It would be nice if others worked with as much sense of urgency. Unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. So
Yeah.
that has been something I've really had to work hard on, is just being patient with others in the process, because I want everything to happen yesterday.
Yeah, no, I love that. What a great, I guess, self-discovery and admission. They say the first step to recovery is admission, and you saying, I have not been, I'm not inherently a patient person, which, that cuts both ways. One, that impatience creates urgency and action. And as you know, it can also create challenges when it comes to dealing with people. And when you don't get the results that you want, it can lead to frustration and counter productivity in terms of thoughts and actions. So I think it's a great discovery. And I think a great reminder for people that patience it's one of those fundamentals, like gratitude, that we've got to have it. We've got to practice it in order to be successful. So interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I just still think, I keep going back to this, but I think business life in general, if you stop stressing about things out of your control, I mean, ultimately, if we have X in front of us that we need to deal with, and it's stressing us out beyond belief, but we know that Wednesday at 4 o'clock, we're going to deal with X, right? I can sit all day today on Tuesday and I can fester about X and I can let it stress me out and I can't control it. I'm going to do it either way. It's going to happen. So up on Wednesday tomorrow, having to do the same darn thing at 4 o'clock. So I may as well have a good attitude about it. Else I'm just going to stress about it all day. I'm going to stress about it tonight. I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to wake up tomorrow stressing about it. And voila, at 4 o'clock, I'm still going to have to do the same darn thing I would have had to do.
Right. So just accept it.
About it. So
just accept it.
Yeah, I think that's like, if I can let anything I've said, I think that's the biggest thing, especially in this climate right now.
Yeah. So let's finish on this. Give us just a snapshot of what your day-to-day looks like in terms of the core activities. What do you know that you have to do every day in order to produce at the level that you produce? There's a lot you could talk about, but those core things.
I mean, prospecting's a certainty.
Okay, pause for a second there. I'm going to ask this rhetorically of everybody. Are you surprised that Matt said that is what he said? My hope is that as I asked that question and he said that none of you was shocked by that statement. So, okay, go ahead. So,
yeah,
prospecting.
I always set aside time for prospecting, and then I prioritize, sometimes based on like money, like deals that are further along are going to have higher priority than something early on. So I think it's just really allocating time. There's only certain parts in real estate transactions, which really, if you do everything you're supposed to do and set the stage and your clients are doing the same, there's only a couple parts of the transaction that should really be time consuming or painful. So I make sure I prospect. I make sure I am communicating any deal I have going. I have almost daily communication in some capacity with my clients sometimes more depending on what we're doing, but prioritize your red alert, like money items versus things that aren't important. And I'm not great on organization. Actually, I'm terrible. I probably need to bring on an assistant sooner than later. However, I do know what takes priority on a day-to-day basis. And I have lists and I knock them out and they evolve as the day goes on. And I triage things. I do. You have to in this business, especially when you're doing volume and have deals, you have to be somewhat reactive. But I will always prospect, period. Prospect and communicate. And if you do nothing else, you'll probably be pretty successful.
I love it. Well, I mean, it speaks to the fact that I believe, and I've always said that real estate is not about homes, it's about people. And
100%.
if you will talk to people consistently, you will be successful in this business. And it's when you fail to talk with people consistently that's where your problem begins, and it will persist. So I just want to
get out of the results business too. You talk about this all the time. Do your thing, right? You have your plan, you're going to execute it. And as long as you can lay your head on the pillow at night, knowing you did your best, forget about the results. They'll come for sure. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, they will come. Yeah. Don't expect that I make a call, I'm going to be in escrow tomorrow, because you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment.
That is so critical. Lean into the system. Lean into those core fundamental things and gain your confidence from doing those things, not from the results that you get on those things on a day-to-day basis. Always like to say, when Michael Jordan took a shot, did he expect to make it every time? Yes, but did he? No, he missed nearly 40% of the time. But he didn't stop taking shots because he missed 40% of the time. He kept shooting, and as a result, arguably the best player ever. It's such an important statement you just said there. So very, very cool. So I want to summarize here, because we are, believe it or not, we're out of time. But there were 6 things in particular that you said today that I just want to make certain that people walk away with, if not understanding, to a greater extent, those 6 things, maybe one of these things that they can take and do better at. Number 1, I wrote here, stay in your lane. Understand what your job is and do that, and things that you're not good at, don't do those things. The second thing is to focus on the solutions rather than the challenges. Most people will spend their time focusing on their challenges rather than the solutions and executing on those solutions. It's so easy because people will allow us, poor you, the pandemic, the demonstrations and the riots, the economy, real estate's tough. They won't blame you. They'll commiserate with you. And yet you're saying just stay focused on the solutions. The third thing I wrote down here is understanding what people's expectations are and meeting them. And if you can't meet those expectations, let them know that. If they have the expectation that they can get X for their home, and that number is not a viable number, it's not going to happen. Don't lead them to believe that you could do that. Whatever the expectation is, make certain that you're going to meet it. And if it's the wrong expectation, let them know. I wrote down also, be grateful. Be in a state of gratitude as much as possible, because that's the number one thing to set yourself up mentally and emotionally for the right attitude to win. And then the second to the last thing I wrote down is to accept things for the way they are. Don't try to change the rules because you can't. The rules are the rules. You want to be successful, accept the process as it is and has to be, and just simply go out and do that. I love what you said, because you'll go for 24 hours fretting and resisting, and it'll affect your sleep. And the very next day at the same time, you got to do the same thing over again. So why not just accept it and do it? I love that statement. And then the last thing here is to prospect and to prioritize. Talk to people and prioritize your money-making activities over everything else. And if you'll do that, it sounds like Mr. Matt Leibman, who is highly successful, will say to you, you too can be highly successful.
Yeah, and the cool thing, John, is 1 through 5 of those, forget about business. Do that in life and you'll have a better life. Forget about this whole thing. Number 6 is business, the prospecting. But I'm telling you, you stay in your lane, focus on solutions, communicate with people, live in gratitude, and accept the things you can't change. Life is going to be a whole lot better, let alone business.
That is so true. And Matt, that is why that I always say that this company is more about personal development than real estate. We just happen to work with real estate sales professionals, but we're focused on our personal development. And it's fun to watch you do that, because I've known you now for 10 months, and I am certain that you have seen it, you've felt it, you're experiencing it, but it is cool to watch your own personal development over the last 10 months. And I'm excited to see where you go over the next 10 months. So
I'm excited as well.
I am so grateful that you spent time with us this morning, taking an hour of your time to very authentically, and I mean that, you were very authentic in what you said and the way in which you communicated it. And that is not easy. And I know that I appreciate it, but I know that those who watched and listened this morning appreciate that authenticity as well. It makes you real, and it's inspiring. So thanks for your time this morning, Matt.
I appreciate you saying that. I think clients like people, humans like authenticity. So not everybody's going to love me, but I'm going to be me, because if I try to be somebody else, I'm going to end up losing anyway.
I love